Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Christ the royal master leads against the foe. Forward into battle, see his banners go. Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Oh, for a faith that will not shrink, though pressed by every foe, that will not tremble on the brink of any earthly woe, that will not murmur or complain beneath a chastening rod, but in the hour of grief or pain will lean upon its God. A faith that shines more bright and clear when tempests rage without, that when in danger knows no fear, in darkness feels no doubt. Lord, give us such a faith as this, and then whate'er may come, we'll taste and hear the hallowed bliss of an eternal home. A charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, a never-dying soul to save, and fit it for the sky, to serve the present age, my calling to fulfill. Oh, may it all my powers engage to do my Master's will. Arm me with jealous care, as in thy sight to live, and O thy servant, Lord, prepare a strict account to give. Help me to watch and pray, and on thyself rely, assured if I my trust betray, I shall forever die. Rise up, O man of God, have done with lesser things, give heart and mind and soul and strength to serve the King of Kings. Rise up, O man of God, his kingdom tarries long. Bring in the day of brotherhood and end the night of wrong. Rise up, O man of God, the church for you doth wait. Her strength unequal to her task, rise up and make her great. Lift high the cross of Christ, tread where his feet have trod, as brothers of the Son of Man, rise up, O men of God.
Let's edify. Yeah, no.
Good evening.
Where's the Saints with?
We need 3 for that. It just doesn't
No.
right. Edifying the saints is professionalism and shenanigans.
Oh, come on. Put a little effort into it.
Edifying the saints is professionalism and shenanigans. It's too long.
But that's our logo. That's our motto. Thank you, Laura. What? The book? Probably. Motto? No. No, there's no copyright. We own the copyright. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because, well, I won't say.
Yeah.
Hello. Where's that? There's a tagging.
You
Woot,
better,
woot.
you better get off this topic, or else we're gonna start.
Paul was laughing at my 2 comments.
Yeah. Who do we got with us tonight?
O'Shea.
Hi, O'Shea.
Ezra, you didn't find it? No. There isn't the book over there? No. There isn't a book with that color cover.
Let me
Well, there's a couple books with that cover, but they don't say what.
Well, what do they say?
There's that one about Plain Talk.
Plain Talk is a Bible, is a biblical newspaper. So that's not it.
They're doing this, yeah.
This should be in. No, that's not it. What is that anyway? Archaeology in the New Testament by Unger. No, it's in the bookshelf. Unless it's on top of my shelf in the office. Where's Sam? Sam, get in here.
Bear with us.
Sister D, Heather, Angie, Susan. You need more excitement, emphasis, like pure joy. Hi, CJ. That's him.
Hi, O'Shea.
It didn't say what you said it would say.
It was about history, but there might be another one too. There should be another one as well. Similar, might be a different color though.
Do you have the red book tonight?
Of course.
Christ liveth in me, 4:21.
Ooh.
I was.
Find the play. No.
O'Shea says, I was so depressed. I mean, fail greeting.
Joe, we have to restart. Because I didn't hear it.
This is a history book, and it's kind of got some fascinating things. But I was hoping to check and see about that famine we were talking about last week. I should have actually pulled up Josephus on the computer in my in eSword, because I do have Josephus there. But I don't. I didn't, I should say. The grandeur that was Rome. Where are our people?
Did people not get the memo or something?
Might.
Okay. My card's gone.
One piece, the one there on the edge of my foot, Alicia. It's back. No, the other one. The other edge.
You
Yeah.
want me to start with this
Or
song?
maybe it's on the other foot.
Where
Go
you
ahead. I'm looking up something real quick.
Christ liveth in me. Was far from God and dead in sin, no light my heart could see thee. But in God's word the light I found, that Christ liveth in me. Christ liveth in me. Christ liveth in me. Oh, what a salvation this, that Christ liveth in me. As rays of light in yonder sun, there's a verse set free. So life and light and longing for when Christ living in me. Christ liveth in me. Christ liveth in me. Oh, what a salvation there's a Christ liveth in me. With longing on my heart, I'm struggling with longing on my heart is filled like
Really?
I can my baby.
And I'm
I
on screen.
don't know understand
Here, all you have to do is pull the hair
that
out.
Christ liveth in me. Christ liveth in me. Christ liveth in me. Oh, what a salvation there that Christ liveth in me.
Ow. My nurse is being a torturer. Hey,
It would be too
I wouldn't do that if I were you.
It's tickle.
I had a letter I was hoping to be able to read to you that you might have found quite interesting. Ah, here we go. While we're waiting for people to come, Alicia, careful with that. This is from Pliny the Younger, and it is it is communication back and forth between Pliny and the Emperor Trajan. So, listen to what Pliny says, and this is, by the way, let me see if I got an actual time. Let's see here. In about 111 A.D., Gaius Plinius Caecilius Secundus, which lived between 62 and 113, The Roman writer and orator was appointed governor of Bithynia, a Roman province in Asia Minor. You might remember in Acts we talk about Bithynia just briefly. To his amazement, Pliny found the Christian conversion had emptied the pagan temples. This is about 111 AD. And ruined the thriving trade in animals for pagan sacrifices.
Imagine that.
Imagine that. The resulting exchange of letters between Pliny and his Emperor Trajan, clearly indicates the emerging Roman policy toward this despised sect. Neither Pliny nor Trajan will seek out Christians for persecution, even though the believers constitute, in their view, a threat world of widespread disloyalty. Yet, in ruling capital punishment for Christians who would not renounce Christianity when accused publicly, the enlightened emperor and the enlightened imperial governor created a basic irreconcilability between the pagan Roman state and the Christian church. Hello, Susan. This is from Pliny the Younger to Emperor Trajan. It is a rule, sir, which I inviolably observe, to refer myself to you in all of my doubts, for who is more capable of guiding my uncertainty or informing my ignorance? Having never been present at any trials of the Christians, I am acquainted with the method and limits to be observed, either in examining or punishing them, whether any difference is to be made on account of age, or no distinction allowed between the youngest and the adult. Whether repentance admits to a pardon, or if a man has been once a Christian, it avails him nothing to recant. Whether the mere profession of Christianity, albeit without crimes, or only the crimes associated therewith, are punishable. In all these points I am greatly doubtful. In meanwhile, the method I have observed toward those who have been denounced to me as Christians is this. I interrogated them whether they were Christians. If they confessed it, I repeated the question twice, again adding the threat of capital punishment if they still persevered. I ordered them to be if they still persevered, I ordered them to be executed. If they confessed it, I jumped back a line. For whatever the nature of their creed might be, I could at least feel no doubt that contumacy and inflexible obstinacy deserved chastisement. There were others also possessed with the same infatuation, but being citizens of Rome, I directed them to be carried thither. These accusations, I can't see it, spread, as is usually the case, from the mere fact of the matter being investigated, and several forms of the mischief came to light. A placard was put up without any signature, accusing a large number of persons by name. Those who denied they were or had ever been Christians, who repeated after me an invocation to the gods and offered adoration with wine and frankincense to your image, which I had ordered to be brought for that purpose, together with those of the gods, and who finally cursed Christ, none of which acts, it is said, those who are really Christians can be forced into performing. These I thought it proper to discharge. Others, who were named by that informer, at first confessed themselves Christians and then denied it. True, they had been of that persuasion, but they had quitted it, some 3 years, others many years, and a few as much as 25 years ago. Alicia, watch out. That's the one they're working on. Let them deal with it, okay? They all worshipped your statue and the images of the gods and cursed Christ. They affirmed, however, the whole of their guilt or their error was that they were in the habit of meeting on a certain ouch. Okay, I'm live. I do not need you causing my toenails to bleed. She's digging with the nail clippers. especially when you said you were going to go get the lotion.
I said, do you want me to go?
The toenail clippers are not lotion.
No.
Okay, so where was I? All right. Right, here we are. Notice this. This was again in about 111 AD. All right. I'm going to start the paragraph over. They affirmed, however, the whole of their guilt or their error was that they were in the habit of meeting on a certain fixed day before it was light, when they sang in alternate verses a hymn to Christ as to a God, and bound themselves by a solemn oath not to any wicked deeds, but never to commit any fraud, theft, or adultery, never to falsify their word, nor deny a trust when they should be called upon to deliver it up, after which it was their custom to separate, and then reassemble to partake of food, but food of an ordinary and innocent kind. Even this practice, however, they had abandoned after the publication of my edict, by which, according to your orders, I had forbidden political associations. I judged it so much the more necessary to extract the real truth with the assistance of torture from two female slaves, who were styled deaconesses. But I could discover nothing more than depraved and excessive superstition. I, therefore, adjourned the proceedings and betook myself at once to your council, for the matter seemed to me well worth referring to you, especially considering the members endangered. Persons of all ranks and ages and of both sexes are and will be involved in the prosecution, for this contagious superstition is not confined to the cities only, but has spread through the villages and rural districts. It seems possible, however, to check and cure it. 'Tis certain, at least, that the temples which had been almost deserted begin now to be frequented, and the sacred festivals, after a long intermission, are again revived, while there is a general demand for sacrificial animals, which for some time past have met with but few purchasers. From hence, it is easy to imagine what multitudes may be reclaimed from this error if a door be left open to repentance. That was the letter of Pliny the Younger to Trajan.
Interesting.
Extra biblical, as in outside of the Bible, evidence as to what went on in our brethren's convocations, if you will, in their meetings, in their assemblies, and how the Roman Empire treated it by 111 AD. Here's Trajan's reply. It is one paragraph. The method you have pursued, my dear Pliny, in sifting the cases of those denounced to you as Christians is extremely proper. It is not possible to lay down any general rule which can be applied as the fixed standard in all cases of this nature. No search should be made for these people. When they are denounced and found guilty, they must be punished, with the restriction, however, that when the party denies himself to be a Christian and shall give proof that he is not, that is, by by adoring our gods, he shall be pardoned on the ground of repentance, even though he may have formerly incurred suspicion. Informations without the accuser's name subscribed must not be admitted in evidence against anyone, as it is introducing a very dangerous precedent and by no means agreeable to the spirit of the age.
Interesting. Yeah, they went through more difficult times than you and I.
Right. No.
But through all that persecution, the church thrived and it continued to grow and multiply. And if we get to it at the end of this chapter, is another multiplicity statement.
Mm-hmm. And so we kind of, having that backdrop, as you kind of understand, here we are in Acts prior to 111 AD, but we are starting to see the effects or the impact of Christianity on the world at that time through Luke's record of Acts.
Right.
O'Shea kind of likes the formal Roman talk. But I mean, notice in our last chapter, in chapter 11, um, how they impacted. In 19, we have people who were scattered abroad at the persecution that rose about Stephen. They went to Cyprus, to Phoenicia, and Antioch, preaching the word only to Jews. But after Peter's words, after Peter's account in 12 verse 20, or 11 verse 20, Acts 11 verse 20, not 12.
We're recapping for just a minute.
Yep. Some of them were men of Cyprus and Cyrene, verse 20, which, when they were come to Antioch, spake unto the Grecians, to the Greeks also, preaching the Lord Jesus. So we see that many are believing, and we have the door to the Greeks and to the Gentiles being opened because of Peter's account. And the hand of the Lord was with them, and a great number rather, believed and turned unto the Lord, verse 21. So what we see, as I said, is the impact that Christianity was having on the world.
Right.
And we also see the introduction of what the secular world thought was going to be a name of shame, a term of shame, actually becoming a badge of honor. For we see that there in Antioch, what happened? Verse 25, 26 rather, verse 26. What?
The disciples were first called Christians.
Yes. And we read in my book here, from that letter of Pliny the Younger to Emperor Trajan. I told you I had a bunch of old history books, didn't I? We read how they were already in 111 identified as Christians. They were no longer under the umbrella of the Jews.
Right.
And so there is so much history, so much that we can gain from just that one little letter
Right.
about life for our first and second century brethren.
And
Go ahead.
And it clashes so well with what we're reading in
It
Acts.
it meshes so well with what we're reading in Acts. Not clashes.
Clashes,
Clashes is a battle. Meshes is a joining.
meshes, that's right, mesh.
So people were called Christians first in Antioch. And that's something important for us to remember. This used to be, this was thought it was going to be a name of shame. And yet it became a badge of honor. And so we pick up in chapter 12. Now we're turning our attention away from Barnabas and Saul in verse 30 of Acts 11, and we're returning back to Jerusalem. And we see the next event that the early church has to face. And CJ is going to take it away. Do you want me to read, or were you going to?
It doesn't matter to me. I was gonna read the first section because it's a shorter one and
Okay,
get you to read the longer one. Is that okay?
that's fine.
Alright. So
Ezra, take me out of the picture.
we pick up the reading in chapter 12, and let's just read verses 1 through 4, and we'll pause a moment and talk about it, and then we'll move on. Now about that time Herod the king stretched out his hand to arrest some from the church. Then he killed James, the brother of John, with the sword, and because he saw that it pleased the Jews, he proceeded further to seize Peter also. Now it was during the days of unleavened bread, so when he had arrested him, he put him in prison and delivered him to four squads of soldiers to keep him, intending to bring him before the people after Passover. And so we begin in verse 1. Verse 1, we read how Herod is persecuting the church. Now, this is in chapter 12. Can anybody name a time when we've seen a mass persecution like this before in the book of Acts? And do you want to be up here with me, Levi, or are you in the background for a reason? No, you.
I was just getting out of your way.
Oh, you're not in my way. Uh, um,
Certainly, I mean, I can definitely recall to mind a great persecution. Um, and that would, of course, would be right following the death of Stephen, as we just read in Acts chapter 11.
right,
They were talking about the great persecution that arose surrounding Stephen and how it caused multiple. I mean, it caused the disciples to be scattered abroad, and they went everywhere into Judea, Galatia, and not Galatia, Judea, Galilee, and Samaria, preaching the word. And eventually, then what we see in Acts 11 is them carrying on the message further to Phoenicia, Cyprus, and Antioch.
right.
So,
And so, from what's recorded, there may have been more in between here, but this is the second, at least, mass persecution that we read of. Herod the king persecutes the church. Now, if you like me, I don't know if this will be helpful for anybody else, but a simple fact helps me that kings were often referred to as the Herod. So we're not talking about the Herod in Moses' day, he's dead. We're not even talking about Herod at the time of Jesus' day in Matthew chapter 2. He's dead as well, if I'm not mistaken. I think Luke says a new right. This is a different Herod than in uh Jesus' birth, or is this the same Herod?
no, it's a different one. There are approximately three, I believe, Herods. There's Herod the Great, Herod the Tetrarch, and then there is Herod of Idumea, I think is how that runs. I might be a little off on that. Um, I'll pursue that real quick while you're.
Right.
There are at least 3 Herods.
So suffice it to say, this is a different Herod, and he kills James. He persecutes the church, and then he killed. He what it says here harasses the church, persecutes the church, and then he kills James, the brother of John, with the sword. And so there are many different Jameses also in the New Testament, but this is not James the James, the son of Alphaeus, was the apostle, right? No. No,
You
this is
have 2
the
James.
apostle.
You have James and John, the sons of Zebedee, and then you have James, the son of Alphaeus. So this is James, the son of Zebedee, the brother of John.
Right. So
And
this is the apostle.
remember that this James and John is the one that their mother approached Christ, begging that they would be able to sit on one on the right, one on the left hand of
Right.
Christ. And Christ looks at them and says, "Are you able or willing to bear the cross that I am?" I think that's how he put it. And he said, "Yeah." They said, "Yeah, we are." And
So
so he says, "You shall indeed." But to give to the right, the places to sit is not mine to give.
this is not
Let's
James,
put that up.
the apostle, right?
It is an apostle. This is James and John, the sons of Zebedee.
All
They are
right.
one of the
Yes.
12 apostles.
Yes. Jesus called him. So this is James, the brother of John, the sons of Zebedee, whom Jesus called, getting my gears going here. And so he does this because Herod is a crowd pleaser. Because he learned from verse 3 that Herod is a crowd pleaser, much like Pilate was. And when he saw that it pleased the Jews, that he just killed James the son of Zebedee, he proceeded to seize Peter also, and those were the days of unleavened bread. And so Herod put Peter into custody, and we'll come back to this idea of it's good night time.
Night night. Sleep tight. Sweet dreams. Love you. Peaceful rest. God bless.
All right.
Good night.
Good night, DJ. Good night, y'all.
Good night. And so, Herod is a crowd pleaser, just like Pilate was. Pilate wanted to acquit Jesus. He didn't find anything wrong with him, but because of the crowd, because the Pharisees and the scribes I think it was just the Pharisees, they stirred up the people and made them riot. Uh, But Pilate continued to pursue the trial with Jesus. Here is something that continues in Acts chapter 12. He's already killed James. The crowd liked that. Now he's got Peter guarded with uh, four squads of soldiers. And if you think about a squad is four, right? So there's four squads of soldiers. So this is 16 soldiers that are in the that are in charge of guarding Peter. I'm not sure if I said Paul earlier, but we're guarding Peter and tending after the Passover to bring him forth to the people. Now, two things to notice. Perhaps Herod uh, heard about what happened back in Acts chapter 4, 17 through 20, where Peter and the rest of the apostles are preached where they're before the Sanhedrin, and the angel lets them out in Acts chapter 4, 17 through 20, and the Sanhedrin finds them back preaching. And so maybe this is the reason. We don't know, that's a conjecture, but perhaps that's why he's got 16 guards. And we'll see how secure this cell is in just a minute. And let me just make one more point here, and then I'll let you come in because I know you got something. Herod intended to bring him before the people after the Passover. This was a common practice every Passover, to my understanding, that the Jews would get two criminals released to them, and that they would choose every Passover who would be released and who would stay back. They did this in Mark 15, 6 through 8 with Pilate and with Jesus and Barabbas. And so now the Passover's come, and he's at least got Peter. We don't know if he's probably got other criminals. And so Herod intended him to bring him before the people after Passover. He intends Peter to be one of those two contestants. But we see that's not going to happen later in the chapter. So cross-reference the end of verse 4 to Mark 15, 6 through 8 with Jesus and Barabbas.
Actually, you can't, for the simple fact that was a Pilate tradition. That was not a tradition that was of Herod's.
Got it.
So this was okay. Let me take you back a moment to Pilate and the world that he lived in. See, to be sent to the nation of Israel was in essence a death warrant for your career. The Jews had a reputation for certain proclivities. For example, God called them a stiff-necked and rebellious people, and such was the case. It's like every time you turn around, you have to be putting down a revolt here and there. Well, when Pilate, and again, this is something we learn from writings outside of the Bible, such as Josephus and other historians of that time, when Pilate assumes control of this area as governor of Israel, he does so as the Roman council, the Roman head. Essentially, he's equal to Herod in power and authority,
Right.
because even Herod, who though he is king, rules at the tolerance of Rome. So he comes in, and because these Jews are so stiff-necked and rebellious, always fomenting rebellion, trying to get out from underneath the rule of the emperor, and Roman governors, Roman citizens, in a ruling scenario, tended not to live very long in Israel, and there's a reason for that. We find that wrapped up in the name of one of Jesus's disciples. Do you remember the disciple known as Simon? What was his other name?
Matthew, right?
No, Matthew is Levi.
No, Peter.
Peter is wrong. Simon. That's Peter is surname Simon, or Simon is surname Peter, but this is the other Simon.
Now I gotta go over to Matthew 10 with that list there.
I read this just the other day in Luke. Where did I learn to read that? Oh, I'm pretty sure it was in Luke.
Who's Labius?
Huh?
Labius?
You're in Matthew?
Matthew 10, 3?
3:10?
10:3.
10:3? Why would you be in Matthew 10:3?
Because before he gives the limited commission, there's a list of the apostles.
It's also in chapter 4.
Yes.
The first Simon, who is called Peter, Andrew his brother. We go down to the James, the son of Alphaeus, and Lebbaeus, whose surname is Thaddeus.
Oh.
But then this Simon the Canaanite is that's not the surname we're looking for. We're looking for his other surname.
Is that in Matthew 4 then?
Actually, the Canaanite is the nationality, but where is it that he calls his disciples? Where was the Beatitudes in Luke?
Luke 6?
There it is. You're right. 6.
I think we just read that.
Matthew 6 or Luke 6 verse 15. Susan says Bar Jonas. No. Trying to remember which one was Bar Jonas. That was part of the son. No, see, that was son of Stone and Thunder.
Oh, that was Peter.
That was Peter. Peter Bar Jonas. Simon Bar Jonas. No. In as Ezra will take us over to Luke chapter 6 verse 15. That would be much appreciated. So everybody can see this. What was the second Simon's surname?
Zealot.
Zealot. The zealot was, to be a zealot meant you were of the sect called the Zealots. They were zealous to restore the kingdom unto Israel. And so they saw any incursion of the Romans as a challenge to the supremacy of Israel. And they were the ones that used to go about, they were the terrorists, if you will, of their day and age. They were the guerrillas. They were known for waylaying people, Roman emperor, or not emperors, Roman governors and what have you. They were known for waylaying them and assassinating them. Now, Pilate comes here. He's been assigned to this backwater country of stiff-necked and rebellious people. And he comes in and with a very heavy hand establishes rule. But in order to gain the trust or to gain some favor with the Jews, he began the practice of releasing a criminal. And so when what we have is when Jesus came to comes to the crucifixion, Pilate does everything he can to release this innocent man to no avail. This is different than what Herod is doing, because notice what he does, or what is said there about the killing of James, the brother of John, back in Acts chapter 12 and verse 3.
Sorry, I thought that was connected. Apparently, that wasn't.
It's common to connect those, to think of that, but we, again, as I've said before, I love history.
Well, I guess it would be connected in this way. It's similar to what Pilate did.
Well, he was going to put Peter to death. There's no other way. Hey, tech person, why are we not in Acts chapter 12? Put your book up and stay with us in the discussion, please. Some people's kids. Now, and he killed James, the brother of John, with a sword, verse 2. Then, because he saw that it pleased the Jews, it didn't please the Jews that he simply arrested James. It pleased the Jews that he slew James with the sword. And so he went ahead and arrested Peter, intending after Passover to try Peter and put him to death.
Right.
Remember that the Herods were known for strife. I mean, after all, we have Herod the Great, who went and wiped out every male child under 2 years old and under in Bethlehem. What kind of a riot did you have there? The second, then you have the Herod during Jesus's adult life, who was known for taking his brother's wife, committing adultery with her.
Right.
They were rife with corruption, the Herods were. And so at certain times, they were wont to try to curry favor.
Right.
But they were also very mean-spirited. And if you didn't toe the line with them, they would find ways to essentially make your life miserable to the point of allowing you to rot in prison. And that's not just a cliche, by the way, because it was in prison that a lot of prisoners developed leprosy and literally rotted away. So here we have Herod, who is assassinating the apostles. Don't get that down the wrong windpipe there, CJ. He takes and he kills James, the brother of John. Hey, it pleased the Jews. I can use this to curry favor. Here's another one that's had a thorn in the Jews' side, so I'm going to kill them and kill him too. And so he brings Peter in, arrests him, and hangs him between 4 quaternions. That's 4 squads of 4. Now, what is significant about this is that for this weekend, for this Passover, that means that Peter was bound hand and foot to 4 soldiers 24 hours a day. He had one at his feet, at each of his feet, and one on his hands. There were 16 of these guards, and they worked round the clock. So if you go for like a 12-hour shift, you've got 8 soldiers that are providing security for this one prisoner.
Right.
So you would have 2 at each gate and 4 hanging on to Peter. No, he wasn't going anywhere.
Yep.
It makes you wonder what Herod had heard about Peter that made him want to keep that close a tab on this man. But anyhow, perhaps I think you were mentioning it. Perhaps he'd heard about how the Jews had put him and John in prison, and the next morning they found them in the temple preaching.
It's just a perhaps. The text doesn't say that, but maybe he heard that he has a reputation
Oh,
for.
I have to correct something. I said he was hung between 4. I said he was hung between 4 soldiers. He was not. He was hung between 2. Verse 6.
Yeah.
Verse 6 is 2. My apologies. So he had 2 that he was bound with chains, and then the rest. Then they had keepers before the door and the gates. So you still are running, a shift of. You got 16 people to run 24 hours.
Right. So they're all fresh, they're all changing out so they don't get tired. So Peter's not gonna catch one of them sleeping off, and in the Roman mind try and take advantage of that. They were around the clock. That's right. So do we want to stop here or keep going? I know we didn't get that far.
Let's go ahead and finish this. The escape of Peter.
So that would be. Do you want to read 5 through? Well, let's see. Is that 5 through 11? I think.
Yes, 5 through 11. We got 6 verses.
Yep.
Okay, Peter therefore, actually 7 verses. Anyways, Peter therefore was kept in prison, but prayer was made earnestly of the church unto God for him. And when Herod was about to bring him forth, the same night Peter was sleeping between 2 soldiers bound with 2 chains, and guards before the door kept the prison. And behold, an angel of the Lord stood by him, and a light shined in the cell. And he smote Peter on the side and woke him, and saying, Rise up quickly. And his chains fell off from his hands. And the angel said unto him, Gird thyself, and bind on thy sandals. And he did so. And he saith unto him, Cast thy garment about thee, and follow me. And he went out and followed, and he knew not that it was true which was done by the angel, but thought he saw a vision. And when they were past the first and second guard, they came unto the iron gate that leadeth into the city, which opened to them of its own accord. And they went out and passed through one street, and straightway the angel departed from him. And when Peter was come to himself, he said, Now I know of a truth that the Lord hath sent forth his angel and delivered me out of the hand of Herod and from all the expectation of the people of the Jews.
All right. So again, we see that just like in chapter 4, there's kind of some parallels between chapter 4 and chapter 12. Just like in chapter 4, we see in verse 6, the church was in constant prayer for Peter while he was in prison. Verse 5. That Peter therefore was kept in the prison, but prayer was earnestly of the church, was made earnestly of the church unto God through him. This is one of the points that is emphasized in this book. The togetherness of believers, the fellowship, the prayers, the unity. The church is praying for Peter here. And look at verse 6. Herod was about to bring him forth before the people, and the same night Peter was sleeping between two guards, two soldiers bound with two chains, and the guards before the door kept the prison. And so Herod was about to bring him before the people. Peter was chained between two guards. We read at the end of verse 6. And so he's kept pretty securely. Levi touched on that. Hi, Sam.
Hey,
Good to
Sam.
make it. And the angel, I think this is pretty funny. I guess this was needed because Peter was sleeping pretty soundly. The angel at the beginning of 7, and behold, an angel of the Lord stood by him, and a light shined in the cell. Now, I would think that would be enough to get Peter's attention, get him to wake up, because if somebody turned on my lights, I'm up. But apparently not. The angel kind of slapped him on the side. He smoked Peter on the side, and he breaks him out of jail. Now, before we get any further, many have questioned this passage and said, why did Peter get out of jail and James is killed? Remember Acts 12 and verse 2? Aren't they both apostles? Why didn't both go free? Is God unjust? Some will claim that. And we need to remember what the preacher says in Ecclesiastes. Time and chance happen to us all. It was God's will to let Peter go, and it was not his will to let James go. Peter had more work. James was ready to go home, and that's what just happens, as the preacher Solomon describes in Ecclesiastes. So to say that God is unjust in any way, in not letting letting James go free is to disregard his insight and foreknowledge and his whole plan. Because we have to remember that chapter 12 does not happen in a vacuum to the eyes of God. God sees the whole picture. So if God decided it was good for James to die and be with him right then, good for him. Who am I to judge the Lord's decisions? Time and chance happen to us all. Solomon says life is not always going to feel fair, but God has a plan, God has a purpose, and it was God's will that the angel smote Peter on the side, woke him up, and took him out of there. And so, do you have anything on that before I go on?
Well, indeed, time and chance happen to all, but this wasn't the time, and this wasn't the chance for James.
Right.
You know, to say, as Solomon did, the time and chance happens to everyone, in some ways limits God's impact upon the earth. Instead, almost a making whim of what happens to man. Remember that most of what we go through today happens because of choices that we or other people make. Now, for me, if I'm walking across the street, imagine that, me walking, but anyway, across the street, and heaven forbid, I get hit by a drunk driver. Was that because of my choice, or
No.
was that chance? I chose to walk across the street at that particular moment.
Right.
And as a consequence, I was in the right place at the wrong time. On the other hand, he chose or she chose to get behind the wheel being inebriated. And so, because of her choices, my body and or my family suffer the consequences of her actions or our actions combined. Um, Chance is not some miraculous or some divine being, as some people wish to make it. And under the Roman system, there were, and under the Greek and Roman gods, I should say, there was what was called the Fates, and they were divine beings which determined each and everybody's destiny. And they snipped some people's cords and others they left go. That's not how it happens, is it?
No.
God has made us with a free will because we are made in the image of God.
Right.
God has a will. We can see that. And in fact, when Moses through Genesis describes the creation of man, God breathed into his nostrils and man became a living
Being.
CJ says being. King James says soul. The Hebrew word is will. Man became a living will, capable of making choices
Right.
and decisions for itself. Now, like CJ says, there are certain things that happen to us which appear to be happening for no other reason than chance. And that's the idea that Solomon is getting back to. Time and chance. Time happens to every one of us. We cannot hold back time any more than the king could hold back the tide in the story that is in the story that's told about that. And if you want to, you can go look that story up. It's not in the Bible. Suffice to say, there was a king who thought he could hold back the tide. Time happens to every single one of us. And there is a sense in which chance happens to every single one of us, because it was indeed, in one manner of words, a chance that James was picked up and beheaded. Medication before we go.
I was trying to make it clear that I wasn't excluding making some voodoo argument with that.
Right. I understood. I just wanted to throw in my 2 cents worth.
Right.
I can do that, as co-host.
Yeah.
Anyway, what? No.
Go ahead.
And there was a sense of chance in the fact that Peter was apprehended. Think of it. There are how many thousands, if not a million, Jews? Probably several thousands, not millions, but anyway, Jews in Jerusalem for Passover. There could be a million Jews, and he simply picks up one, and it happens to be Peter.
Right.
How much of a chance is that? How much, and so we see that effect coming. Peter happened to be at the right space at the wrong time to be apprehended by Herod.
Right.
Sam says, besides Stephen, James was the only apostle recorded to die. However, Stephen was not technically an apostle. Not in the same manner as what you're using as James was. So, so this death of James pleased the people, the Jews, and Peter was going to have the same. But here's the thing: I think I agree with CJ a lot when I say it always makes me laugh when Peter is sleeping here, and the angel comes and slaps him on the side. It says he smote Peter on the side. Wake up,
I would think the bright shimmering light would wake me up, but no, Peter's a hard sleeper apparently.
It was definitely enough that it would wake me up, because I'm conditioned to wake up at light. It's hard for me not to come awake. That's how Dad used to get me up when I wanted to sleep in after staying up till like 4:30 in the morning reading my books. I wonder where Ezra gets it. Now, the angel slaps him on the side and says, wake up. And he has a moment's notice, essentially, before those chains drop off his wrist. Rise up quickly. You can see him rise and shine, sleepyhead. And all of a sudden, there went the chains. I'm not trying to make light of the scriptures in any way, but there is a sense of humor within some of these stories that is very evident.
I read it as rise up quickly. Come on, let's get out of here.
And you almost see that Peter kind of dropping to the ground with the support of the chains no longer there.
Right.
And then he's so tired that angel has to tell him what to do. Can you imagine that? Yes, you can, because if you've ever had a child, you know exactly what the angel is going through when he says to Peter, "Get up, gird yourself, put your clothes on." Because a lot of times you'll get the kids up for school, for example, and they're so groggy and addlepated because sleep is still in their head that they have to be told every little detail. Get up, put your clothes on, put your shoes on. Now put your jacket on. Let's go. You know.
Yeah.
And and that's the idea that's carried behind here.
So the angel tells him to put on his garment and follow him. Peter did not know in verse 8, I think verse 8. Verse 8 Ezra. Yeah, gird thyself and bind on thy sandals, and he did so, and he said unto thee, cast thy garment about thee and follow me. And he followed him. In verse 9, Peter did not know whether the angel was real or he had a vision. In other words, just like Levi was explaining, that grogginess of a child when you wake them up. He didn't know really what was going on. So, in a blur, the Peter, they went past the second, they were past the first and second guidepost. They came into the iron gate which leads into the city, which opened to them on its own accord, so there's another miracle. And they went out and passed on through one street, and straightway the angels departed from him. I almost see this as a quick thing. They went here and here and here, and then verse 11, Peter realizes what just happened. He came to himself. Now the Greek word is genoemi, genon ahi, and it really it means to be assembled. He assembled his thoughts. He came to himself. That's that word come, genoemi. He assembled himself and said, alright, here's what just happened. Now I know the truth that the Lord has sent forth his angel and delivered me out of the hand of Herod and from all the expectation of the people uh
Come on, Ezra.
of the people of the Jews. So I was delivered from Herod, I was delivered from the expectation of the Jews. In other words, I was delivered from the jail, I was delivered from death, because as Levi corrected me on, uh, the Jewish expectation was he's going to uh, he's going to kill Peter. He's going to have a public execution like he did to James. And so that brings us through verse
11.
11. Is there any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Levi.
Just on your genonomy, um, in that it is carrying with it the idea of ordering one's thoughts.
Yes.
So you're gathering information. You're bringing your wits about you, and you see again the idea of one who, not that he's sleepwalking, Sam, but that he thinks he's in a dream.
Right.
You see, he's not actually in a dream. He just thinks he is. And it's not until he gets outside of the prison and the angel departs that he suddenly realizes this is not a dream.
Right.
Um,
He
the,
is.
it is not a state of subsumed will either. The angel didn't come to him and take over his will and lead him without any will through the prison and out,
Right.
and being set free. Because remember, he smote Peter on the side, said, "Rise up now, put your shoes and coat, and clothing on. Put your coat on. Let's go." And they walk out. Peter is thinking, "Okay, this is I must be daydreaming. I must be sleeping. I must be dreaming still because this can't be real. That I am walking out of prison."
Right.
Um, and there is a very real sense as he suddenly comes to himself and realizes this just happened. What would you be thinking if you were in Peter's place?
Wow.
As you have been hanging, or as you've been stuck between two soldiers for at least a day. Because remember, Passover was, um, what was it? Was that not a week celebration?
I think it was.
It
Yeah.
was. It was a week celebration. You're right, yeah. Um, but at the culmination of the Passover, then there was 50 days before the Pentecost. So we have a week that leads up to the Passover. The Passover itself is the seventh day of this week, and then you have after that the 50 days to Pentecost. And Peter has been hung here for who knows how many days, at least one day. But it's interesting to note that he was kept there by 4 quaternions of soldiers. And
Isn't it? Sorry.
go ahead.
Isn't it funny that if it is true that that was the reason why they had so much security is is that that they might have heard of the events next floor. The very thing that they were trying to prevent happened again. So there's that just shows that this group, this these Christians have a God and serve a God that is mightier than guards and bars and walls and windows and even mighty rulers, Herods.
Okay. Chapter 12, verse 3 tells us how long Peter was in prison. Chapter 12, verse 3. And when he saw that it pleased the Jews, he proceeded to seize Peter also. And those, or then, as the King James says, were the days of the unleavened bread.
So that would
So
be
this is the week up to Passover, because the Feast of Unleavened Bread was the 6 days before Passover,
right.
if you go back in your history of this particular feast. Um, Sam says, can this happen today, that God bring us out to something without us not coming to full realization until later that God is leading us? Or am I trying to make too much out of it? If you're trying to ascertain whether or not the miraculous bringing out that Peter happened or had happened, if that occurs today, I would say no. Does God move us into certain places, or allow events of our lives to shape us and move us to the place where He wants us? The answer is yes.
Yes.
God puts you exactly where you need to be.
Right.
And it may be for a short period of time. It may be for a long period of time. It may be just dependent upon how soon you learn whatever lesson it is that God has for you at that particular place and time. But be assured of this one thing, that God still rules in the kingdoms of men, and He raises up and He casts down those who He will, just as He did during the old days.
Right.
This is not to say that the miraculous gifts and stuff still happen. This is to say that God has not changed since the beginning of time. He has always ruled in the kingdoms of men. So if He rules in the kingdom of men, and you are His child and His servant, you know what He's going to do in your life, because you have given your life over to His service, to His rule.
That's right.
Let Him take you where you need to be, and be that servant that He needs you to be right then, right there, that He wants you to be right there, right then, and learn what He has for you to learn.
Well, I think that about wraps it up. Thank you, Levi.
Thank you, CJ.
Appreciated the study. I had notes for all the way down to the end of the chapter. That was my goal, but I should have known better. Uh, Thank you all for being here.
So, as our stated goal is, here at CEM, we strive to edify the saints with professionalism and a few shenanigans thrown in. But ultimately, we want to edify you so that you walk closer to the King each and every day of your life. That way, whether you... Oh, we got a comment here. Craig, have a good night as well. Susan, what? You want to read it?
And I got a few announcements to go over too.
Oh, you don't want me to do the outro yet. That's what you're saying.
No.
You don't want me to do the outro.
Yeah, go ahead and read that.
Yes, Susan says, I believe that too. I was fired in one and only one time, and that was the worst thing I thought could happen. But I refused to quit, and my family resented any of us being fired. But now I realize He wanted me to move elsewhere. And I can say along with you, Susan, that my family, as in when I was growing up, my family was moved to exactly where we wanted to be. And it was because God saw that we needed to learn a lesson at this particular place. Was it beneficial for us? Yes. Was it where we should have been? Probably not. Because you see, what we had done is we had got enamored with a particular place and congregation, and we wanted to go work there, thinking we could make a difference there. And so instead of praying, if you will, if it is your will, we totally left out that aspect of it. We said, we want to go there. Take us there now.
Right.
And so God did. And we came to a very slap in the face realization that the picture that the congregation had painted of itself was not what was really going on. And that congregation was split right down the middle. And no matter how hard our family tried to heal that division between the two separate parties of that congregation, it never came together.
Hmm.
And in fact, Dad was let go, or he resigned. I'm not sure exactly how that one worked. I don't know if he was fired. I don't think he was fired. I think he was asked to make a decision whether he wanted to be fired or whether he wanted to resign on his own terms. So we ended up staying an additional year or two at that congregation, still trying to make a difference, still trying to heal that breach, and it never got healed. They weren't interested in healing. And so we changed congregations. So we learned a valuable lesson. Never, ever ask to go somewhere without first using the term, if you will. Make sure that you are bowing yourself in humble obedience to God's will, not trying to impress or and trying to enforce your will on the outcome.
Right.
Because remember, God lives in you. Christ reigns in you. And it's not you and I that live, but Christ that liveth in us. And we need to reflect God's glory. Just like James chapter 4 says, come now, you who say tomorrow we will go to such and such a city and buy and sell and get gain. What you should say is, if the Lord wills, we will go and do this or that.
That's right.
I learned that lesson. It was a very painful lesson, but it was a lesson nonetheless. And I grew because of it. So I'm thankful for that opportunity. But I also wonder how my life would be different if we hadn't have gone. Go ahead with your announcements.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, on Wednesday night, our next evening edification begins a 3-night gospel meeting of
Another pillar of faith in
yeah,
Faith Hall of Fame.
sorry. Anyways, another pillar of faith that'll be Wednesday night. It'll be me and O'Shea here presenting.
Unfortunately, I have a class that is required for me to maintain my driver's license as a school bus driver. I am not able to get out of it and be able to be here for that lesson.
But Thursday and Friday, me and Levi should be back together. But
If the Lord wills.
if the Lord wills. And then I want to make a few cancellation notes. Wednesday, the Wednesday edition will not be airing for God's Answers to Your Questions this week. And we will not have a Roman study Saturday night because I will be fellowshipping with Christians at a party. I hope to resume that study next week. So thank you all for being here. Yes, I am the unpaid intern, I guess. Thank you all for being here. Remember at CEM we have 3 goals. We want to glorify God. We want to edify you, the saints, and we want to answer any spiritual questions you may have and help you grow. Thank you all, and God bless.